Hi, I'm Carl Azus, and Fridays are awesome. Welcome to CNN Student News and 10 minutes of international current events coverage. Recently, we've told you about protests against South Korean President Park Geun-hye, who's been accused of corruption. Today's show starts with a focus on North Korea. It's just been hit with its toughest international penalties so far over its controversial nuclear program. For years, the international community has been trying to get North Korea to end this nuclear program. The Asian country says nuclear technology is its right. The United Nations says it's illegal. But despite multiple talks with North Korean leaders, and despite sanctions, penalties meant to hurt North Korea's economy and its ability to build nuclear weapons, the country has continued to develop its program, repeatedly testing nuclear bombs and ballistic missiles. This time around, China, a border country of North Korea and its strongest ally, has supported new sanctions against North Korea. Will that be enough to change its behavior?
Defiant and definitive, North Korea's launched more than 24 prohibited ballistic missiles this year alone. And on September 9th, state TV announced Kim Jong-un's 5th successful nuclear test. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, says one Korean official likened the atmosphere to living with the Cuban Missile Crisis every day. Crucially, China's backing the sanctions, which will cut North Korea's single largest export, coal, by 62%, worth around $700 million a year. China is their biggest customer. But previous round of economic sanctions haven't slowed North Korea's nuclear program.
He is not going to cut his missile program and his nuclear program with those hundreds of millions of dollars. He's going to find other places to cut.
Sanctions on North Korea, he says, are counterproductive. Although six-party talks have been tried and failed over the years to stop proliferation, it's direct talks with the North Korean leader himself that could make the difference.
We don't even know Kim Jong-un. We haven't had high-level diplomatic contact. No head of state has sat in a room with Kim Jong-un. We thought Kim Jong-il was crazy until people started meeting with Kim Jong-il. When high-level people, including the American Secretary of State, sat down with Kim Jong-il, they were shocked because they discovered the guy was not nuts.
It's called opening a dialogue.
President-elect Trump has in the past said he'd have no problem speaking directly to Kim Jong-un, even suggesting they have hamburgers instead of a state dinner. But he's also said North Korea is China's problem to solve, and he'd pressure them to deal with the regime. With growing protests here in South Korea calling for President Park to go, we could soon see two new presidents in Seoul and Washington, with all eyes on their policy towards North Korea. Simon Mawson, CNN, Seoul, South Korea.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump and Vice President-elect Mike Pence traveled to the state of Indiana yesterday. That's where Mr. Pence is governor, and it's where they visited a plant owned by the Carrier Heating and Air Conditioning Company. Carrier announced in February that it would lay off workers at the plant and move those jobs to the nation of Mexico. But on Tuesday, the company said that in a deal with the incoming Trump-Pence administration, it would keep more than 1,000 jobs in Indiana. As part of the deal, the state agreed to give Carrier financial incentives worth $7 million over 10 years. But Carrier previously said it expected to save $65 million per year if it moved those jobs. So it's possible that Mr. Trump's promise to lower the U.S. corporate tax rate and increase tariffs on companies that do move factored in here too. The deal is seen as a victory for the president-elect, who'd promised to keep jobs in America. But Democratic Senator Bernie Sanders criticized it, saying other companies could now threaten to move jobs overseas in order to get tax benefits and incentives themselves. Most popular sport in the U.S. is football. Most popular sport in the world is football, but a different kind, what Americans call soccer. Still, there are a growing number of Americans and American organizations like the National Football League who want to export their favorite sport. Recent NFL games in Mexico City and London are proof. So is what's happening in China.
Under the lights, something new in China. The helmets, the pads, the hits. It's football American style in a country that doesn't know much about it yet.
And compared to the other teams around the league, this one's relatively new. How are you guys competing?
For a new team, we are competing very well.
These are the Beijing Iron Brothers, one of 14 teams from across the country in the relatively new American Football League of China. They're gearing up for a game against the Shanghai Nighthawks.
As this league grows, I can only see the talent growing. I can only see football growing.
It's a bold claim in a country where football typically means feet only and a round ball. NFL games are tough to watch because of the time difference. Tuesday morning football just doesn't have the same ring. Plus, sports like ping pong and badminton have long reigned supreme. But there are those who believe there's a yearning here for something a bit more physical.
I personally love the game, and I love seeing it take off here in China.
Chris McLaurin founded the league in 2013. A former standout at the University of Michigan, he knows quality football, and he knows his league has a long way to go.
I'd say that we're at a D3 college football level at this point. More practice is required, but it's developing fast, and they're learning quick.
McLaurin says he's tapping into a sports renaissance in China, with more young people than ever trying new things. And a much bigger league wants in on the action. The NFL is slowly increasing its profile in the Middle Kingdom and its 1.4 billion potential fans, sponsoring flag football leagues and clinics like this one.
2, 3, right there. Better.
Yes, that's the recently retired Peyton Manning, one of the NFL's most well-known stars, giving tips on a 3-step drop back to kids outside Beijing. He's part of the league's strategy to have its stars help promote the sport, a hugely successful tactic already employed here by the NBA. Basically, the NFL is looking for a Yao Ming-type success story.
You get somebody that's playing as a young person and where there's interest and his friends are playing it and they're into it and creating that type of interest, and who knows, maybe there will be a player in the NFL from China.
And maybe that player would come from the American Football League of China. It's just amateurs for now. The players even have to pony up for most of their own gear. But the plan is to start paying players in the next few years as sponsors line up and ticket sales rise.
To see it grow from 5 years ago to where we're at today, where we can get 5,000 people out to a stadium to watch a game, that's a huge leap.
The Iron Brothers ended up losing a close one to the Nighthawks, but they say they'll be back and better next year, just like the league in which they play. Matt Rivers, CNN, Beijing.
The Frying Pan Tower is about 35 miles off the coast of North Carolina. It was a U.S. Coast Guard light tower, originally designed to keep ships off the Frying Pan Shoals. Today, it's a bed and breakfast. The pros: great fishing, great driving range, great views of the Milky Way, no bugs whatsoever, and great isolation with only miles of water surrounding you. The cons: great isolation with only miles of water surrounding you. At about $600 per person per weekend, which doesn't include shipping, a lot of folks might pan the idea thinking it's not a shoal lot of fun. But those with waves of imagination who can tolerate being alone and alight upon a towering ocean of possibilities for seclusion, this private island is a beacon of opportunity, y'all. I'm Carl Azuz, and you have a great weekend.